welcome to Coffee Break Blogging, where you'll learn to grow and monetize your blog in short, tactical installments you can use right away. Now here's the next episode in our series. Hello there, David Risley here. Welcome back to Coffee Break Blogging. Today we've got a really cool topic that I know is relevant to a lot of my listeners, and that is turning a service or time-based offer into a product and therefore scaling your business. And specifically, we're going to go over 7 different tips, 7 different things to keep in mind for turning a service offer into a product and therefore scaling your business. Okay? Now, before we drop into that, I wanted to let you know that this show is brought to you, well, by me, but you could go over to blogmarketingacademy.com/listeners. This is the lab, which is the framework of everything that we talk about on this podcast. What I've created with the lab is an all-in-one training library and support community for those people who feel as if starting and growing an online business can feel like an awfully lonely experience. Okay? Inside the lab, we got the full course library, which as of this recording contains 23 courses, or 22, I think. It's about to be 23 with the launch of the Facebook Ads Blueprint, which will be coming out shortly. We've got the big lab community, which is really active, where all the lab members, including myself, are in there helping each other every single day. It's actually gone really well with my recent transition away from using Facebook for that. We've got the member feedback system, where all lab members now have the ability to submit ideas, strategies, lead magnets, whatever it might be from your business. Send it to me and I will respond to you privately. It's a way of getting some private consulting essentially from me as part of your lab membership each month. Now, it's not going to be you and I on the phone. It's going to be usually I'm replying to an email, but it's going to be more of an in-depth response, or many times what I will do is record a private audio, kind of like I'm doing right now with this podcast, except instead of you listening to the podcast, I'll be talking just to you. We've also got the office hours sessions where I'm live streaming right from my office. We've got a chat room inside the lab and the live training room, and we just do Q&A and live training and stuff like that. This is all basically the underlying framework around the Blog Marketing Academy, and it's known as the lab. And you can learn more about that at blogmarketingacademy.com/listeners and get an exclusive option to join the lab, kick the tires without investing the full amount up front. Okay, so with that being said, let's jump right into our topic, and that is the 7 tips for turning a service offer into a product and scaling. First of all, let's talk about this idea of trading time for money. This is where a lot of people find themselves. Now, first of all, I want to make reference of the fact that if you think that that's not a good thing, I want you to disabuse yourself of that idea. A lot of people tend to look at people out there talking about passive income and all that, and it looks all sexy, you know, the idea of sitting on the beach and drinking a pina colada and you got this passive income. And certainly it's a great thing. But I don't want anybody to look at that and then look at you trading time for money and denigrate it. I don't want you to feel bad about it. Trading time for money is essentially the way that our economy works. And quite frankly, even those people who now have passive income work their asses off to get to that point. Okay? So let's just call it what it is. Essentially, when you are, receiving money for something, you are receiving money in exchange for the value of your time. And that's essentially what that is. But I also understand that if you are solely trading time for dollars, that you might want to get out. You might want to scale up. The truth is that when income is tied directly to your time, your income is automatically capped. Okay? That's the truth. There's really, unless you are just not very busy right now, then you've got that room for growth because you have more time available in your day. But it gets to a certain point in a service business where you're just busy. You're really, really busy. And you can't get more than 24 hours in a day. And so there's really no way to increase your income other than increasing your prices. And then you're wondering, okay, are people going to stop coming to me if I increase my prices? And it leads into this doubt about what to do about it. The other thing too is that when you're in the service business, clients can sometimes be a little annoying. Now, if you're charging right, typically higher prices, you're going to get nicer clients, okay? I have certainly found, and I know a lot of other people do too, that the less you charge, typically the more problematic customers you're going to get. Now, it's still always a very small ratio of the whole, so I don't want anybody to be scared by that, but just ratio to ratio, it is what it is, okay? We don't escape this fact that sometimes clients can be a real pain. Most of them are not good, which is a good thing, okay? It's also, when you're in a service business and it's all based on your time, you probably know that it can be really demanding on you. It can introduce inflexibility into your lifestyle. The idea of going on a vacation with your family can now become more difficult. And it might not be because you have difficulty affording it. It could be that too, but it could also be because you have all these clients depending upon you and just it's simply difficult for you to get away. And so for multiple reasons, you might want to look at changing your business around a little bit so that your time is not necessarily directly tied to your money. Okay. But this transition process can be a little bit difficult. And so to that end, I want to give you 7 pieces of advice today on how to maybe rethink a few things in a service-based business. And again, this could be if you are, a web developer, a programmer, a consultant, a coach, lifestyle coach, whatever it might be. If you are in a service type business where it's based on your time, then let's talk about these 7 strategies right now. The first one is to productize your services. Now, you might be thinking, well, duh, but here's what what I really want you to focus on here is that it might be time, if you were in the business of doing customized work, like really custom stuff where it's the kind of thing that people have to come to you for estimates, and really the whole buying process doesn't really start until you go through this whole estimate process and all that, you might want to look at productizing your services so that you can now create packaged services that you can price at a fixed rate. And the reason is because a lot of times people can make that buying decision on the internet because they know what the price is up front. Whereas if they are having to wait for an estimate, they might not ever contact you for it. Some people, they see, I'll request an estimate, and they just won't bother, even if they are curious what you're going to charge. They just won't bother because they think they're getting into a sales process. It takes time. They want instant gratification. A lot of psychology comes in there when people see that request an estimate type of button or contact our sales team or whatever. So one of the things about productizing your services is to literally turn it into a product in that you know what the price is up front. Okay. Now, it might be that you got to simplify some things, which is going to get us into our next point here in just a minute, but it might require also that you stop doing certain things and that you concentrate on certain aspects of your service offering that are pretty repetitive. I want to invite you to check out a book called Built to Sell. Off the top of my head, I actually don't remember who wrote that, but I did read it a few years back, and it was fantastic. It was basically a story wrapped around a business concept, and it was the idea of this guy who was running this, I think it was a web design or, graphic design type of company. But it was running him ragged. He was working like long days, that type of thing. And he ended up working with a coach of some kind, and that coach happened to be the author of the book. And he was writing this book in this story, like a fiction story style way. Okay. Ultimately, what ended up happening is that the coach convinced this guy to stop offering all these a la carte type of things. It's all customized and every client is being treated different, whatever, and just concentrate on doing logos. And this guy hemmed and hawed and is like, oh my God, you're going to kill my bottom line. I'm never going to make enough money. How could I possibly do that if all I do is make logos? And he's like, just trust me, do this. And so he took the leap, and he did. And all he did was do logos. And he built up a lot of different procedures around doing logos. And get to the moral of the story, his business sales increased dramatically because he could focus exclusively on, this is what I do. I make logos. We bam out logos really fast. Here's what our prices are. And ultimately, he sold that business and made a whole lot of money, if I recall. And so that's a book called Built to Sell. And it's the idea of offering packaged services. And instead of trying to be all things to all people, we productize it. And we might even simplify it down to just a few things. Now that brings us into tip number 2 of tips on turning your service offer into a product and scaling, and that is to simplify things. Okay? Offer less things. Don't have one of these situations where you're trying to accommodate such a wide variety of clients that you have to do things like request an estimate and have a fancy phone call with them and that type of thing to determine what they want. And then you got to, do the estimate process and all that. Just offer less stuff. You might even want to specialize what you're doing. So instead of being all things to a very wide market, you just pick a subsection of that market and you just focus on them. And then you become the person who does that. Okay. And that's going to make you stand out in the sea of like wider amount of people. So for example, this is something more related to my market. Let's say you have a web developer, like a general web developer who will do WordPress and program things and whatever, and so this guy or gal is going to have a hard time positioning themselves in the market because they're just kind of up there against every other web developer around the world, some of which are overseas and charge significantly less because their economy allows them to do that. Versus, let's say the same person says, well, I know how to do membership sites really well. And so therefore, he completely repositions himself to where instead of just being a general web developer, which of course he is, he now specializes and just having membership site owners putting their membership site together. And so it simplifies everything because now he can create templates, he can create all kinds of things to shortcut the process, but you can now just focus on creating membership sites, only membership sites. You are the membership site building person. Okay, rather than a general web developer. Now that's just an idea off the top of my head in my particular market, and obviously membership sites is something that I'm big on, and that's why I thought of it. But the idea here is to simplify, to offer less stuff, maybe more specialized stuff, but you just do it better. Okay, now that brings us also into tip number 3 for turning a service offer into a product and scaling, and that is to systematize production. What I mean here, first of all, let's talk about this word systematize. Systematize means to turn something into a system. And now in business terms, a system is basically like an assembly line in a factory where you get certain inputs, certain very predictable steps take place to those inputs, and then on the other end of it, you get a finished product. And it's very, very repetitive. In fact, a lot of factories are now using robotics to do everything because it's that predictable. That's systematizing things. Now, you can do this with a service as well, because most likely your service consists of certain fairly repeatable steps, things that you kind of do with most people. And it's going to be the same from client to client, okay? And so you should be looking at those items and how to systematize things. So look for opportunities to create templates, shortcuts, things that you do on a repeating basis, but now you've got, 60 to 70% of the work already done because it's so similar. And then all you got to do is tweak that remaining 30% for that client. Look for opportunities for canned responses where you have really good, solid customer support replies and stuff like that, but already pre-written. So that you can concentrate on just delivering and only customizing the necessary things. Even in terms of marketing, you might have a customer follow-up process for a new lead, and you can totally automate all that with your email autoresponder. And so your site is literally doing your marketing for you while you're sitting there just working on growing the business and performing client work. Okay? Look for opportunities to use forms. For example, if you usually need certain input from your clients and like everybody needs to answer the same questions, send them to a form which asks for all those things, and it avoids all this email back and forth and all this crap. You can systematize that using forms. Look for opportunities for internal staff checklists. And even if it's just yourself, make checklists for the things that you do. Okay. Also, look for anything that you could turn into a procedure. A checklist, that type of thing. This is all a matter of systemizing production. It might seem like an extra amount of work at the beginning, but I guarantee you it's going to save you a lot of time later on. It's going to allow you to scale up this service offering in a much bigger way. Plus, it's definitely going to come in handy when it comes time to productize the business even further. Okay, so let's jump into number 4, and that is to turn your one-on-one work, if that's what you're doing, into a group offer. Okay? Now, in some lines of work, this isn't going to make sense. But if you're in the consulting business, coaching, that type of thing, then it most certainly can. In fact, a lot of coaches actually do that. So instead of actually offering one-on-one work where your time is really not very leveraged at all because you can only talk to one person at a time, you instead scale up by offering small group coaching where you might put 5 to 10 clients into one class and you teach that class. And it's basically very systematized. That's going back to our last tip where we talk about systematizing everything. You're going to have a systematized process at this point, which you can bring 5 to 10 people at a time through it simultaneously. So instead of you talking to one person at a time, you're now talking to 10. You're delivering 10x scale from what you were before. Now, obviously, every client is going to have their own little unique things. And so you're probably still going to have some one-on-one in there, and you build that into the value of the program and you make time for that. But then you're only talking about those things that are custom to that client. You're not covering repeating ground with each client one-to-one because you're now got the group coaching thing to it. The other thing that's great about offering group coaching type things like this is that it allows you to basically open and close each one. And that provides that marketing scarcity, which you could say, hey, you got to get on this class by such and such a date. And it gives you that sense of urgency and it helps you basically close the sale. And then you deliver for a while. And then when that class is done, you go into marketing mode again in order to bring in the next set of clients. Okay. So it works out really well, especially again, if you're in consulting or coaching style business. Okay. Let's bring over to number 5 of our 7 tips for turning a service offer into a product and scaling. And that is to record everything that you do. Okay. Record all of it. Even your one-on-one calls with your clients. Now, it doesn't mean that you are going to distribute those calls. I don't even think that would be legal. Okay. But record everything that you do just for archival purposes. Okay. So you're going to find from that material that you are going to have things that you can add into products later. Obviously, for private one-on-one type work, you're not going to be able to do that, at least without their permission. Okay? If you got their permission to turn their thing into a case study, then go ahead. But otherwise, you definitely don't want to do that. But you want to record everything that you do with people, especially for how-to type of things, because while you are performing a service, let's say you're on your computer and you're performing some service that some client hired you to do, just like you've done over and over again. Why not open up a video recording software and just talk out how you're doing what you're doing? Okay? It's a pretty big deal because that material can turn into a product later. But the other thing that it does is that it enables you to someday be able to walk away from what you're doing and have somebody else fulfill your role. And this is something important for all service businesses to keep in mind, especially like single entrepreneur businesses they're doing all the work themselves, is that even though you're the one doing all the work and you're like the face of the whole thing, you want to document your own job as if it's a job separated from you. In other words, don't identify yourself with your own work like a part of your identity. Look at your job as a separate job, as an employment position, okay? And you write it up and you document it as if it's just another employment position. And what you're doing is you're making that thing doable by somebody else. And therefore, the entire operation becomes less dependent on you over time. And that means that one of your avenues of scaling is simply going to be hiring other people to do it. And so you're therefore still doing a service business, but you are now the owner of the operation, and somebody else is now doing what you used to be doing. Okay. So this all goes back again to number 5, record everything you do. Okay. Because it will either come in handy for future products, or it will come in handy for you to be able to make your position doable by somebody else. All right, let's go to tip number 6 of the 7 tips for turning a service offer into a product and scaling. And that is to take the repeatable systems and turn them into products. Okay. So this one you might have known was coming, but you've been recording everything. Hopefully you've been spending time on systematizing your production. You maybe simplified operations to allow you to do that. So you're not focusing on being all things to all people, but you're specializing in certain services that you know people will need and want. And now you take a lot of these repeating systems that you are now doing and you assemble them into a product that people can purchase from you. And it's complete and total scale at that point, because you can, if it's going to be a digital product, and now people who don't want to have you do it for themselves or just want to do it on a cheaper way. And you say, well, fine. Well, here's the how-to. There you go. It's cheaper. And go for it, and it's a digital product, so it's 100% profit to you, right? And the other thing too is that you can build that into your funnel at that point, where you have the product offer, maybe even a series of different product offers, but you're also still offering the service. It's just now more of a back-end product. It's more of a higher-end product, okay? But you now have that front-end type thing of digital products in your business. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the last one. Tip number 7 for turning a service offer into a product and scaling that thing up. And that is to look for opportunities for the back end of your sales funnel. Okay. So you've got your core thing that you do. Hopefully now you're thinking about simplifying it, systematizing it, productizing it, things like that. You still want to look at the idea of a sales funnel, and you want to build that in to your service business. So some opportunities for this back end of your sales funnel might include service arbitrage. So service arbitrage is very simply where you have some other business provider, some other provider out there performing a service that your clients might also want. But instead of you doing it for them yourself, you arbitrage somebody else's service and you take a cut on the other end. Okay? So let's say that other provider charges I don't know, $500. I don't know. We're just coming up with this off the top of my head. And maybe they cut you a deal because you're referring people to them and they don't have to do any marketing work. And they're now charging $300 and you get to pocket the $200. Something like that. It's service arbitrage. So look for opportunities to partner with other businesses to refer people to them, and basically you're getting a finder's fee. And you could set this up in multiple ways. It can be a simple affiliate type relationship, or it could even be where that person is performing the work under your brand, and you guys just create kind of a licensing agreement there. Okay. So another opportunity for a back end would be in offering supporting offers as an affiliate, basically simple affiliate marketing. So what you would do there is look at products and services if you want, but in this case, I'm talking more about products, software, things like that, that would be of interest to your type of clientele. So like in my business, one way of doing this would be if somebody joins a lab, which is not really a service aspect, it's a teaching aspect, but I do have services at the Blog Marketing Academy too. And they need to create a bunch of landing pages, which pretty much everybody in my line of work does. I would offer Thrive themes as an affiliate. And I do fairly well with it too. So that is an example of that. It's offering something that is just part of the service, something that those people are going to need, and offering it to them as an affiliate. Last one I want to mention here for a back-end opportunity would be retainer fees. So if you're in a service business and you kind of get the core product done, you can actually have a maintenance agreement afterwards, something like that, where you're on retainer to help them debug certain issues, and they might pay you monthly for that. And it's just basically the opportunity to have you do smaller scale follow-up work. But what you've essentially done there is allowed you to build a recurring revenue into a service business, okay, which is a really, really beautiful thing, okay? All right, so those are our 7 tips. I hope that was useful for all of you guys listening to this podcast who are in a service business, coaching, consulting, actually performing done-for-you services for people, whatever they might be. This can help you move into the type of stuff that we're talking about here. Because one area of confusion that I've definitely seen with some people before, and that is to think that if they're in a service business, that this online marketing stuff that we talk about around here somehow doesn't apply to you, or that it's a little bit different. And you know what? It's not. Blog-based marketing and the online marketing that we talk about works for pretty much everything. Okay? Now, I'm not going to be helping people like sell Etsy products and eBay. I mean, that's not what I do. But essentially, if you're selling anything from your own website, even if it's trying to get local leads to a local service business, it can be done using blog-based marketing. Okay? And so if that's the case with you and you need some help setting some of this stuff up, I would encourage you to jump into the lab that we were talking about earlier. And again, the lab is the teaching and community and support aspect of the Blog Marketing Academy, where you and I can work together to implement much of what we talk about in this podcast. If you want to check that out and have an exclusive into the lab without paying what everybody else pays, head on over to blogmarketingacademy.com/listeners and check out the deal that I have exclusively for people who are listening to this podcast. Once again, that's blogmarketingacademy.com/listeners. With that, thanks for listening. That's why we call you the listener. Hopefully this was valuable. I will see you next time here on Coffee Break Blogging. Take care.